at one point, this was probably 2018, we were like, do we sell lemons? Right? Crazy thought. And the farmer was like, if selling lemons is going to get them to buy my Hawkeye turnip, like, are you crazy? Like, please sell lemons. Like, otherwise, they're not going to come to you for my Hawkeye turnip. Remembering that as well, that you're solving a customer pain point. And a New Yorker, our best-selling SKUs are bananas, avocados, and lemons. None of those things are ever ideally going to grow in the Northeast. That in and of itself is a compromise of the first founding like local principle.
Okay, we're super excited today to have Michael Robinov on the show. Michael is the amazing co-founder of Farm to People, which is a modern CSA based in New York, in Brooklyn actually, focused on bringing local, sustainable, and healthy food to New Yorkers. And they also recently opened a restaurant, so a physical location. So excited to hear more about you, Michael, what drove you to build this business, and what keeps you going. So thank you so much for being on the show.
So excited for you to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Isabelle and Elle. Nice to see you both again.
Yeah, likewise. I came across the fact that you went to the Waldorf school. And this is a school that's founded by Rudolf Steiner, who is an esotericist, an occultist. He was acclaimed clairvoyant, and he founded this school that was all about this like holistic approach to education, to like sort of nurturing imagination, access to nature, biodynamic farming. And I thought, wow, A, what would compel your parents to actively send you to a school like that? And B, like, how did that cultivate your early path in life and to Farm to People?
Yeah, I think it's a funny story. So if you don't mind, I'll go it because
let's get into it.
It was, I think, like a love that grew for my parents, in the sense that my mom initially really wanted to send me to the Lycée Français of New York.
Oh,
wait, what's that? What is
French school?
Oh, yeah, French school.
She wanted me to
how come? Is your mom French?
She's just like more of, no, she's like a francophile. I don't know. She like loves, she really wanted me to be bilingual. Yeah. I think she liked the little uniforms. She wanted me to, so she really wanted that. I don't think my dad really cared. But it's a funny story because I'm like, 2 years old, getting into a New York City private school is an ordeal, even when you're 2. Yeah. And I think essentially like the story, I don't have no recollection of this. I'm 2. They bring me to the Lycée Français. I'm sitting there and I think I had a cold or something. So I'm sneezing. I'm not my best self as a 2-year-old. Right. I didn't interview well.
How dare you?
And apparently the other 2-year-old that was there, the father was like going to build them a new basketball court or something. Oh God. And so I bombed the interview. They didn't accept me. And my mom had heard through like, I guess a parent group about this really interesting 2+ program at a Waldorf school, called Rudolf Steiner School, and just decided like, let's show up, let's do this 2+ program. She could meet some other moms and learn more about the education. And lo and behold, like just really fell in love with all of it. When you're in early childhood, they talk more about how, they're not going to teach you reading. You're never going to see a computer until maybe high school. At the time, this is the 90s. And it was just very, very, so the polar opposite of Lycée Français. And in early childhood, you like learn how to bake, how to draw, how to build. It's all about imagination. You go into Central Park and you're digging for worms. It's like such a different experience. And they really just fell in love with it and then continued. I went there, besides 1 year when I lived in Italy, and also went to a Waldorf school randomly.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Was that in high school? Or?
It would have been 9th grade. I actually repeated 8th grade and then came back, didn't tell the Waldorf school here that I repeated 8th grade, and I was never a 9th grader. I never did freshman year.
That is so wow.
Which I heard was it's a good year to skip. So
I think so. It's like that weird transition here. But like looking back, do you feel like that really encouraged you in your path and what you're doing with Farm to People today?
Yeah. In the sense that I think being okay with being different, being okay with taking like a path less traveled is something that you don't really realize what that means until people are, I dropped out of out of college as well. And for a while that seemed maybe bold and cool and whatever. And then, friends from high school were then getting like really great jobs out of their college. And I was like, really struggling. And I was like, maybe this was a mistake, but being sort of resolute in taking a path less traveled, and being okay with the loneliness of it all. And also then having that creative energy and backing and being able to sort of carve your own path. There were a lot of skills that I think I learned there that I definitely feel like I've exercised in the past.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I went to a creative college as well, Savannah College of Art and Design, shout out. And I think the thing that when you come out of these creative programs, what it teaches you is that like life is not linear. And when you are really using your creativity as a resource, you can connect unconventional dots even outside of your art. You can do it in business. You can do it in, anything you touch really, right? You can just use your creativity to sort of be unconventional. And I think that's the strength in educations like yours and mine as well, that it really teaches you to fall back on that creativity at the very end of the day. You can always reach for that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And I think in a startup, you almost want to go the road less traveled. Like, don't like why, especially as we've been bootstrapped. So like, why start a company to be like another company especially without capital?
Right.
Like
Right.
You gotta be different,
Yes.
and you've got to like find your own little like solution to a problem you see. That you expect other people are not necessarily seeing. And that's something I think you learn, that kind of creativity, I think, is something that's, I guess, taught, in these kind of weirder schools, so to speak.
Totally. Yeah. It's like unconventional schools. Yeah.
Can you talk about, you mentioned briefly, you did go to college for a year, if I remember correctly, and then dropped out. What were you pursuing in college, and how did you come to the conclusion that you did not want to continue?
So I went to NYU Tisch. I was really, really, really into theater and film, like in high school.
Tisch is performing arts, right?
Yeah. And I was in a like screenwriting, film track, so more on the create, not the acting side. Although I did like acting in high school, I was definitely more on the like writing, directing, producing side of things, which I think translates to running a business more, although there is a little bit of acting involved as well. I really thought, I wanted to be like a sort of like auteur writer director or something, and was very, very passionate about that. Was not particularly interested in business. Although like looking back, I was obsessed with like box office numbers, like what I would read, like sort of, whatever Yahoo movies or whatever I'm forgetting the industry news are, papers of the time. But I was really interested in all of that, how much actors were getting paid, how much it cost to produce, how much it cost to distribute. So there was like but I just was obsessed with the film industry. And then, so got into NYU, which I would say is like, a really great school to do that. I think one of the issues was I grew up in New York City. It was weird to go from this very, very privileged like high school with a lot of like creative parents, like it was just like a really interesting, very stimulating network that I was very fortunate to just grow up around from Steiner, that all of a sudden then going to like NYU and like being in a dorm, not with just Tisch kids, which is good and bad, but like, some people that just like didn't have, like, were in New York for the very first time, were interested in business, or I don't know, not to like, psychology, or things that just didn't really interest me as an 18-year-old in New York. And I just wanted to be obsessed with film and immersed in working. And I don't know why I really wanted to work. Pair that with the fact that at NYU, I felt like all of the teachers, especially for like freshmen, are like sort of like Hollywood failures to some degree. They all had like, maybe a play or a movie like produced 20 years ago, and they talk about how Hollywood just beats the shit out of you. And
very inspiring. Really makes you want to pursue.
Yeah, and how there's a formula to everything, and you just got to follow the formula. And it was I was just like, oh, like it was so different than Steiner too, which was like be a free thinker and anything is possible. And it's just like no, like. You'll be lucky to have one movie produced, and it's a formula, and everything's this 3-act structure, and it follows the hero journey. And I was just like, ooh, and then the real moment that hit, well, two things happened. I met Anina, my co-founder, and she was, my partner before she was my co-founder, and she was taking a gap year, and she had gone to a Waldorf school upstate. So we met through that network, so there is definitely the Waldorf connection. And she was taking this gap year and kind of forging her own path and really wanted to travel. And I was like, this is badass. Why am I just going into school? Her parents are German. There's a much more like accepted culture around gap years and college, like pushing off college immediately.
I wish we would accept that more here.
I totally
I think
agree.
it's just smart. You're too young at 18 to know.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're too young. You need to go and like fuck up and have experiences. And
Amen. Yeah. And especially, so that was on the one hand. On the other hand, I was working at the farmer's market, which I got I volunteered at the farmer. Every year at Steiner, we had to like do like some amount of volunteer hours. And in 11th grade, I wanted to volunteer at the farmer's market and just learn being a farmer's market stand employee or whatever. And I did, my 65 weeks or something, 60 hours or 6 weeks. And the manager at the farmer's market was like, oh, you've been great for free. I'll pay you to continue working. So that ended up being pretty much my own, besides babysitting, pretty much my only job I've ever had. I guess the other piece that was crazy to me was going from high school to college, and not really understanding the cost of college in a real way. It was just like these abstract big numbers.
Yeah,
You're
right?
18. You're
yes,
just like,
you don't know. You don't get it.
$70,000 a year.
Yeah.
It feels like a lot, but you don't know like, oh, I'm going to sell a film. I'm going to make millions. like this is going to be easy. Like, what's this money? And obviously as you grow up, you're like, that's a shit ton of money. And what really crystallized that was I was running 15 minutes late for a class. And I was with another student. We were like walking really fast to try to get to this class. And we started doing the mental math of what the 15 minutes cost that we were late.
Oh, I love it.
And it was $84 or something for that class. And I had made in my half shift at the farmer's market like $84.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, that was such a hard work day for $84 and 15 minutes late to this class where I didn't sleep well last night. I'm like, gonna sit there and just like wait for this class to end, which is gonna cost, 6 times more than the $84. Like I'm spending $400 plus for this class that I'm not valuing properly. And that putting that together was...
I mean, that's so impressive though, to put that together at that age and just like think about it in that way and think about the trade-offs that you're making. Cause I think we're all at that age, especially guided to like, follow the path, and being able to put that together is just, I think that's pretty unique. Did you go to your parents then and you said, I don't want to do this anymore?
Yeah, it coincided with Anina also wanting to travel to India for a few months. She was like, I want to go backpacking in India. I was like, I had saved up a little bit of money, not to pay for NYU, but like a little bit of spending money from working at the farmer's market. And I basically, went to my parents and was like, I want to try to take a gap year. I want to try to audition for some plays. I'll work at the farmer's market. I'll do whatever it takes to sort of, just try my hand. I want to travel a little bit.
What'd they say?
Yeah.
What was their response? Were they like,
response?
absolutely not, get back to work and school?
We should have sent him to the French school.
Yeah. I was like calling Lisa angry.
Yeah, right.
No, and this is, I think, where, my father's an entrepreneur. I think he's a really there's a part of him that's super creative and a part of him that's very just common sense, like no BS, just kind of like a different thinker about systems. And, he would often tell me that he was a terrible student. He got kicked out of some college that he went to.
So he basically was like, it's cool. Like, because a lot of entrepreneurs and famous ones at that drop out of college. And I mean, we've heard, countless stories like the dropout and Steve Jobs. And so he was more open to this for you.
Yeah, I think he thought school was not where he thrived. He had to find his way and didn't have really parental support. Like school was the way. He was more of a disappointment. And I think there was I was the beneficiary of that. And I think he was trying to be different and was successful in being different and was really like, college will, and my mom too, college will be there.
All right. So insurance is not exactly the sexiest topic, but when you need it, you really need it.
Oh my God, girl. Yes. When I was running Loopy, I had more than enough horrible claims to deal with. But thank God for Amelia Risk. They were amazing. They picked up my phone calls, listened to me crying, and they had really good rates too.
So if you're a founder, you already have enough to stress about. So let Amelia Risk handle all of your insurance claims while you focus on your purpose and aligning that with your business.
That's right. And for all Say More listeners, you can get a free audit. So just go to ameliarisk.com because boring things like insurance should still be really good. Can you talk a little bit about your dad? About you touched on it a little. He was an entrepreneur, very successful in the natural food space. Can you talk about how you witnessed him building that business when you were a kid and a teenager, and maybe what impressions that left on you?
Yeah, so many. I mean, I think, and this goes, I guess, even to the spirituality part of him too, which he is definitely like very much like a businessman. Like he's very much about numbers and cash flow and all the important things. Like he never raised capital.
How did he learn that? He dropped out of school too, right? Like were his parents business owners? Like how did he learn those skills?
Yeah, interestingly enough, his grandfather was a grocer. So my great-grandfather was a grocer. And then his father was a lawyer, so not a businessman at all, but was in real estate law. So he always said he had like really good lease negotiation and lease review. I think, he always says like the math you've got to know. He's sort of like matter of fact about it. He's like, the math you got to know to run a business is like 5th grade math.
Right, yeah, it's true.
It's really not, he's like, I opened my first store on the back of a paper bag. Like I wrote the business plan and tallied the numbers without any sort of, obviously he's added systems and all of that over the years, but it was like, what are you spending? What are you bringing in? How much goes to this bucket and that bucket? And at the end of the day, are you in the red or in the black?
But there was this piece of wisdom that you actually talked about before where he's like, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I wonder, was that something that came through for him? Because like you only have the energy to grow your business and put more energy into it if it energizes you and if you love it and if you show up every day and there's something about it that is giving you energy or like that feedback loop, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, like, is that where that wisdom came from and how did you witness that as a kid?
Yeah, I think he really is like the embodiment of like a serial entrepreneur. Like he's not a operator who likes to, I think he gets kind of bored. He's an idea person and loves to conceptualize. He is also an executor, but like I think at a certain point he like sort of outgrows the execution. He talks about this. He created like a sort of an informal chain of natural products grocery stores that he ended up selling to like a more formal chain called Mrs. Green's back in the late 90s. But he like, one was called Nature's Warehouse, one was called Katona Natural Market, like one was called Down to Earth. Like he just kind of created different concepts for different neighborhoods and never really, which he's, admittedly was probably a mistake. Like his first store opened the same year as Whole Foods in Austin. Wow. So there's like a very obviously different path that could have been taken if he had seen the opportunity that John Mackey saw. And his journey to natural foods was really through like the macrobiotic lens. He was also, this is a weird through line, but he was also interested in film in the like, I guess 70s and was working, as a PA and as a driver and whatever on different projects. But says I became very unhealthy. And a friend of his was actually working for the founders of Erewhon, not Erewhon when it was on the East Coast, the original
Boston, right?
In Boston, exactly. So his best friend from like high school had started like
Erewhon's that old?
Yes,
Whoa, I didn't know that.
But it was since bought and has changed ownership, and now it's piggybacked. But it started in Boston originally.
Started in Boston. It had a I think like a early it had a farm attached.
Yeah, wow.
It was a distributor of natural products. So his friend and my dad, he was a hippie, my dad. So his friend, like got involved in Erewhon and was eating a macrobiotic diet and was basically like to my dad, like, come live with me, sleep on my couch. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to heal you.
Wow.
And my dad was healed by this macrobiotic diet, was really like converted to food. This was like the first time in his life, in his mid 20s that he was like converted to food. He ended up taking a job with, I believe, Erewhon, as a sales rep in the like Brooklyn, Long Island region. Did that for 2 years from like 1978 to 1980, and then happened upon a location that was underperforming on J Street by J Street Metrotech. And decided to take a little bit of his bar mitzvah money. He partnered with the distributor that he worked with, and he partnered with like another vitamin distributor. They financed the inventory, which he paid off over time, and basically opened a store, like bought the lease of a store and opened a store for basically no money and converted it in like 15 days and opened it. And that was sort of his foray into retailing, which then I didn't come around for 12 more years after that. At that point, he had, I think, 4 stores. Saw him bring it to 6 or 7. I was
like, you were
tiny.
little.
Yeah. And then he sold that in 99 when I was, I guess, 7.
Wow.
So have very little recollection.
Yeah, you were pretty young.
Of that. Although there's, like I remember like running around the store. He did have a spiritual store in Katona.
We love this.
Yeah. Called Awakening.
Audience members, I'm a developing medium. I've mentioned this before. But yeah, I love the spiritual side of these things.
Yeah. Crystals, incense, all of the...
Look at that.
What happened to that store? Is it still...
I think it still exists.
We have to go.
You have to go. Yeah, field trip.
To go. Yeah.
In Katona, New York. I think it's still around. But anyway, so... grew up around all of that, and then he went into CPG, which you know well, and that was, I remember that a lot more, and how that really formed my relationship to like food supply chain and farms. He was the first, him and his partner were the first folks to import organic olives, capers, sun-dried tomatoes, red peppers, jams, all from Italy, Greece, Turkey. Through large distribution channels like UNFI. They sold through all of the Whole Foods and co-ops and all of that, and built that business quite rapidly. When I look now, 12 years in, I'm like, wow, you guys really. But it was sort of like two guys who had been in the industry for a while, knew a lot of the right people, and were able to just like
leverage that,
and in a really good way. My dad was more the operations, sourcing, finance guy. He partnered with a great friend who's like a brilliant sales and marketer, and the two of them just boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, whoa, I wish I knew how to do.
So I'm assuming that like with all of that, you grew up eating very healthy and very like whole foods. And how did that inspire Farm to People?
Definitely grew up eating amazing food and didn't really, again, appreciate it, I think, until...
We never do, right?
We never do.
In hindsight, it's like, what did they say? They say youth is wasted on the young, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing.
Right.
So yeah,
totally.
You never realize it until you look back. Totally.
I guess luckily I feel fortunate that, there were other people kind of at the farmer's market, like telling me how lucky I was. I through the farmer's market really tapped into like the more foodie. I was 17 or 16 when I started to 18 or 19. And so I tapped into an older cohort of, they were probably, older in their like 20s to 30s. And they were living alone in Greenpoint and cooking, and they liked the farmer's market because it gave them access to affordable, working there gave them access to affordable, great food. Meanwhile, I was at NYU eating dorm food, and that was like the worst food I'd ever
Oh my
had.
God.
Oh God, it's so
Yes.
sad.
Compared to what I grew up with. And I was like, oh my God. And I didn't have a kitchen. I couldn't cook. And Nina was cooking. I met Nina really, through her, learned how to cook, would bring her food from the farmer's market. So there was all this like weird connection of suddenly in my life being aware of how lucky I was, and also realizing that other people were waking up to like how bad food could be and how good food could be, in a way that also, having traveled to Europe, for Dad's work, for our vacations, I was like, whoa, food is so much better there. Why? And really the only way to get that type of food in New York is through the farmer's market. That coupled with, my dad being this sort of, I guess like skeptic on the organic food system, the natural food system, the big business of it all, and how he was like now transitioning from a founder to a sort of more like angel investor and advisor to small businesses. He was like the barrier to entry. Like his famous, I could never do what I did in the 80s today.
No. Yeah.
So sad.
You need, $500,000 to get a product, not to mention then, and even this is 2010, 2011 when he's talking about, now it's 2 million, 4 million, so the barrier to entry is just ridiculous. And at the same time, Smorgasburg, I don't know if you remember Smorgasburg was just starting. So you had like the Mass Brothers or like Anarchy in a Jar or Brooklyn Deli. You had this like real like entrepreneurial spirit of all of that starting. And so my dad was really like starting to fixate on the supply chain issues and this barrier to entry. And if there was like a way to create a business around that. And I was on the other side, like, 20, I guess I came back from India. Pre-India, we'd started to have these conversations. He was noodling an idea of shortening the supply chain, creating a direct connection from suppliers to people. He had worked with a friend on an idea, didn't work. I had at the same time gone to India with Anina. There was a kind of point of pride in India where everybody sort of says like everybody's an entrepreneur. It was the first time in my life I'd become really, I felt more fortunate than ever before to be an American. That was something growing up in like the George Bush era and having lived in Italy while I was a little ashamed. Yeah. I was like, I'm from New York, not America. It was a weird time.
I feel like people still say that today.
Well, yeah, now we're back.
Or again.
Again. But there was a. When Obama was, if I had lived in Italy during the Obama years, I might have been like, I'm an American. But it just happened that it was George Bush. We had the disaster of Iraq and Afghanistan and all of that. And so but anyway, going to India, I was like, wow, like poverty in America looks so different than poverty in India. But yet the entrepreneurial spirit in India, this idea that like anything is possible, was infectious. And I was like, why doesn't America have more of that spirit? We have so much more of a built-in base and support network. We should be so much more, I guess like aware of how lucky we are. And so when I came back, I was again sort of intent on not going back to college. Pitched my dad on letting me take another gap year and pitched him basically a business model based on the idea of, I loved the idea of shortening the supply chain. I loved the idea of creating a farm to people network.
Why was that important?
Yeah. It seemed like there was a lot of interest around eating better. A lot of it was coming out of, I guess, the recession at this point, a bit out of the recession, but like looking at farmers market growth, looking at Smorgasburg growth as indicators of small batch makers.
So you were really seeing an opportunity. I'm curious, like, because you talked a lot about this like entrepreneurial spirit and how this kind of like zeitgeisty thing captured you. What about it was so like intriguing or energizing for you in that moment that you were like, you know what? I'm going to fucking do this. I'm going to create this idea for this specific opportunity because it's really important to me. And I'm going to jump. Like what pulled you there?
There's a part of me that is, I think, like competitive as well. And there was something about this idea that seemed so obvious, even if like food to that point in my life was more, was more of this like thing I realized I just had, but it wasn't like what I grew up passionate about because I just had it. Being in film was more of this aspirational goal, but there was like this time when I just felt like food and the stories behind your food and the transparency of that was all colliding in this.
I love this insight. You're basically saying like you wanted to be more of a storyteller, which by the way was like the thing you started to go to school for, and now you're like pulling that into this entrepreneurialism and this opportunity, and you decided to tell stories about the supply chain and the farms and the farmers.
Exactly.
Wow. Look at that.
Did you ever, I'm so curious because when I hear your story, you grew up in New York. Not a lot of people can say that. And then you've lived here your entire life and you're building a business here that in some ways it's like a really hard thing to do, to bring the farm to the city, right? Like that is like a really big challenge. Did you always know you wanted to stay in New York, or did you have moments where you felt like, oh, I actually, I'm so connected to this supply chain piece. I think I want to be closer to that versus being in this crazy chaos and trying to bring it and move it over here?
I ask myself that question all the time. I have never found anywhere else that makes me so alive as New York. It's not that I'm not open to somewhere else. Like, in fact, I often go somewhere and think, could I live here? Like I am very open. I love exploring and I love new things. So there's always this part of me that is like, could I live here? But I always after a certain period of time and sometimes even after a weekend, I can't wait to come back to the energy that's here. And also I think part of that is New York to me, building a business that I feel like New York needs, and I feel very much like having grown up here, even in creating like our new warehouse, which has an event space and a restaurant attached. Part of even doing that was sort of a rebuke of the way New York was headed pre-pandemic and early pandemic, which was like so much towards like chain store. Like I felt like every new store was like a Duane Reade and a Chase and a Starbucks at a certain point. And it just like lacked this sort of like independent culture. And then in the pandemic, even there was 15-minute grocers opening up and dark stores. And I was like, what is this adding to New York? It's just homogenizing the whole city. And we had this opportunity to take a space that was a former cider house and a watering hole, and this idea that just because we're a delivery service, which is our core and what we're trying to do, and making great food easy and convenient and accessible to more New Yorkers is our mission and our goal. That doesn't mean that we don't want to be a New York brand that is a part of the fabric of the city.
Totally. And I think there's something when you talk about the farmers market, or, we talk a lot about my passion for the Park Slope Food Co-op, the community piece, right? And you cannot replicate that digitally. It's not possible. And we've tried, and during the pandemic, we didn't really have a choice. But the fact that you have that gathering place now too, where you can actually do more of that storytelling and bring in people and bring in some of the companies and farms that you work with, I think that's really the golden combination, of both, like really creating that place where people can gather and come together and connect with their food, basically.
100. You said it better than me. Yeah, 100%, 100%. And that was unachievable at many points in the history of Farm to People. Like we couldn't compete with Chase or Starbucks on retail lease. We had to be sort of this dark store, and in a sort of nondescript building on the 4th floor. Like I didn't love doing that. It was all we could afford at a certain given time. But when we were able to look for our next space and had the opportunity to either do that again or do something different, we again kind of chose different.
Talk about the stories that you tell using that space, because you guys have collaborated with some really amazing people, including 11 Madison Park, which they've gone completely vegan, correct?
Yeah, are they still completely vegan?
Wow.
Yes.
It's so incredible. And obviously they're very well known, especially here in the city. Talk about storytelling with some of your collaborators and like what that means to you and what you get out of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that opening our space, if it wasn't for the community, then what was it for? And so we tried to like look around and think about like, what were some of our favorite people doing, people that we aspire, people that were inspiring us in the food system, whether they're farmers, whether they're influencers or chefs or anything else really. And we really left it loose. It was like not about that we just needed to partner with Michelin starred restaurants or just needed to partner with farmers. It was like really the people shaping the food system in any way, which is incredibly broad because everybody eats multiple times a day. There's so many people tackling, very small pieces of the food system in such magical ways that we decided first, why don't we, we had this kitchen, we had this space, what we didn't have was really capital. So we're like, how can we get really creative about like, what do maybe an influencer that has like a digital audience but has never been able to like activate in person. We have this in-person space. We have this kitchen. We have this ability to bring maybe a recipe or a menu of theirs to life. And so that was like the early idea, was we have our young creative team that wants to bring your recipes to life and invite your audience into our space using our ingredients. And that was the initial idea. And it was really hard. Bringing a new menu to life for one weekend is an incredibly challenging thing to do.
Yeah, God, how do you demand plan around that? Like that's
yeah. Really good family meals next day.
Yeah.
But you know, you learn. Resi helps a lot. Like how many covers are we gonna do? And then just learning from your mistakes, as with anything. And I loved that a lot, but I felt like what was missing there, even still, you had the human connection, you had people coming into the space, you had people breaking bread together and connecting, but they didn't really come away from Farm to People knowing like enough, in my opinion, about the food system and about all of that. And so this year we decided to change that a little bit more towards this idea of, and we've had this on our boxes since our founding basically, but it's like Farm to People and it's know your food. And I realized we never really leaned in. We leaned in digitally, but we never really like leaned in the way that I wanted us to around knowing your food. And I was like, man, I have like such a privileged job where I get to talk to CPG founders, where I get to talk to farmers, all of these amazing folks around how they're, you know, building their business and changing the food system. There should really be a way for our audience to come and learn, you know, from these conversations and hear from them directly and have a Q&A. And so earlier this year, we decided to start like just a Know Your Food event series where we're bringing in, you know, amazing folks, you know, from Chloe Sorvino to Marion Nessel to Rick, the farmer at Ronnie Brook, who's, you know, been farming.
Shout out Rick.
Yeah, he's amazing. To Alicia Kennedy, to just all and many, many more. And people, I think, are really like, you know, we all see I don't want, you know, not to be political, but the one nice thing about, I would say, not the one there, I don't want to like, you know, even take a stance. There's many nice things. There's many not nice things about like Maha.
Yeah.
but I think that what I am appreciative of as a whole is that it's now like a national conversation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I totally agree. Yeah. Completely agree. Go ahead.
And I think most people would agree with that. And it's crazy to think that it's only now that we're starting to think about that and talk about that on a national
level. Well, they completely missed the
level.
Opportunity at the pandemic. Like, I mean, we should have been talking about this a long time ago. So yeah, it's good that it's happening now.
100%. And my mission is to even keep it, like, I think health should be a nonpartisan or a bipartisan issue, like, you know, 100%. And so I'm even, you know, with friends who are, you know, more liberal, democratically inclined. I'm trying to remind that, like, we can't lose sight of, like, you know, good causes that we cared about and championed not that long ago, even if you disagree with a portion, or you'll never agree with everyone 100%. But like, let's push getting our land and our people healthier. That should be like, how can you
That's
disagree
pretty
with that?
Foundational.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's that meme that I actually wrote this down. It was like, of all the inventions and the creations that humans have made, like, what we owe to our life is 6 inches of topsoil and the fact that it rains. Like, it's pretty fundamental. Maybe we should start there. Yeah. Which is why we love so much what you're doing. On Say More, we've discovered that the best ideas rarely come when you're distracted, uncomfortable, and not fully present in your body. It's nearly impossible to hear that inner voice when you're wrestling with your clothes, especially ones that are made of plastic and that don't breathe. By the way, 60% of today's clothing is made from plastic. That's why I founded the big favorite, super soft, 100% Pima cotton tees, underwear, and other essentials for men and women. They're simple, well-made, and designed for fit and comfort, sure to become a new favorite, so you can focus on the things that matter, like letting a good idea hit. Shop basics and underwear at thebigfavorite.com and use SayMore15 for 15% off your first purchase.
It's so interesting. I feel like you have such a guiding star of like what your business stands for, which I think there's so many ways to build a successful company. And we've had so many different founders on the podcast that do it in different ways. But you always are going back to that and asking yourself, like, how does what I'm doing in my business measure up against that? And I think that's a challenging thing sometimes, right? Like you started off thinking about local and organic, and then you start realizing that you need compromise also in some ways. And I've felt that with, building Loopy and putting bars that I think are amazing and healthy and sustainable into plastic wrappers, because that's the only way I can preserve them for a grocery store. And I'm like torn. Should I even start this business? Because it so fundamentally goes against what I actually believe in. And so can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how do you, when you find yourself at a crossroads of compromise, how do you make a decision, and how do you keep kind of true to your guiding star of what the business should stand for?
I think you have to remember that you can't do everything all at once, and that change takes time. And I think that is why a strong mission is really important, because while Farm to People has looked very different throughout the years, and we've embodied our mission in different ways, the mission and the principle of Farm to People has never wavered. And the idea of creating a platform for small batch farmers and makers, and shortening the supply chain and bringing this food more directly to customers, removing as many middlemen as possible, this idea that, we are the two in Farm to People, and that there doesn't, every time another distributor gets their hand in the pot, it also, but also we still rely on some great distributors. I think that's a compromise in and of itself, right? Like, we now work with more direct farm relationships than we ever have in the past. And next year we will look back on this year and say, wow, we're working with more farms directly than we were last year. So it's always this idea that our mission is our guiding star and what we're going towards. But we also have to remember that, in order, and a farmer put this to me really, really wonderfully when we were thinking about, I think it was selling. At one point, this was probably 2018, we were like, do we sell lemons? Right? Crazy thought. And the farmer was like, if selling lemons is going to get them to buy my Hakurai turnip, like, are you crazy? Like, please sell lemons. Like, otherwise, they're not going to come to you for my Hakurai turnip. And so remembering that as well, that you're solving a customer pain point. And a New Yorker, our best-selling SKUs are bananas, avocados, and lemons. None of those things are ever ideally going to grow in the Northeast, TBD, but never going to grow in the Northeast in an economical way. And so that in and of itself is a compromise of the first founding like local principle.
And I think that others have done a really good job. But I think more about the identifying when you're kind of have to find a middle ground somewhere. You have the ethical purity, which in isolation is beautiful and you can believe in. And then you have the reality that you're running a business and you have to sell something that consumers want and will buy. And how do you communicate that with your customers? And it sounds like you really care about being transparent and taking feedback. So how do you work with customers on like improving the way you do things and build the business?
Totally. I mean, I think it's knowing what I found, I don't know if this is the, every business has its ways of finding things, and there's many different ways to grow or to succeed. I believe for us, it's been about like understanding what our customers are looking for from us, or from other, in our instance, from other grocery stores or from other like food sources, and what they're not finding from the current ecosystem. And if there's enough of if the murmur becomes like a rattle, like there's enough of an impetus to like push towards that. I think one of the things we've done in the last 12 months that's been super, super exciting, and I'm really proud of the team for bringing to life. And there's many sort of like residual like benefits that weren't even planned, but the guiding mission of it was people didn't like single-use packaging. People don't like single-use packaging. Our whole team is very, riding bikes, driving hybrid vehicle, like very much about, like minimizing our own footprints. And so we kind of weren't seeing out in the world anyone truly doing like circular logistics. There's lots of challenges with that. It's already very difficult to deliver a box and get it there. The idea that you have to also deliver and now train your drivers on picking up something.
Yeah.
There's nothing easy about it, but it started to go from just our team saying, is this a problem, to customers saying like, I wish I didn't have to throw away the ice pack. Okay, could we pick up the ice pack? Picking up an ice pack is not a super economical decision. An ice pack costs maybe, 40 cents. Picking that up costs more than 40 cents. There is an ease of single use. There's a reason, it's cheap.
But the ice pack is compostable. Right. So
yeah. We had already iterated on making it the best single use it could be.
Yeah.
That still doesn't mean it's like right?
Totally.
And it was the best. We always try to be the best of that we can be at the time, but that doesn't mean that better isn't there. And so that was a really, really cool like thing where like as more customers really were and there have been failed like zero waste grocery startups that have raised a lot of money and it hasn't worked. And I think the fact that we didn't start with that written into like our founding principles, but was something that like is very clear, like someone who's eating, regeneratively grown lettuce, also it makes sense. They don't want to throw away, a plastic, bag or a box. All of this sort of was a more seamless transition to be like, well, if we're really like serving our customer, what they want is for us to, deliver it in a reusable container of some sort that we can then pick up and reuse, which then in turn has such great like retention characteristics. So it's a retentive tool and it's also better for the planet. And it's also, we were delivering cardboard boxes. There's 1 million cardboard boxes in a lobby. Now we're delivering a beautiful green bag into lobbies. All of a sudden, people are like, what's that green bag?
Yeah.
And it's sort of creating
Marketing.
This like different identity.
Totally.
Yeah.
Now a friend texted me a picture. A courier stole that bag and now is using it as their DoorDash bag.
Love it.
So we're
free
like
advertisement.
Free advertisement. It's like it's so wild. Like it started like it's just sort of like the accidental. Sometimes you get lucky. But the principle of why do it was really around a customer pain point, which so much tied into the principle of what farm to people is and should be. So that was the initial like nudge in like, let's create all of the headache around circular logistics and solve it for ice packs first and solve it for our boxes. We want to do it for milk bottles, for our prepared foods. The next step will be doing those in glass and getting those all returned. So really going towards zero waste. But again, we didn't say we're a zero waste grocer from day one, but our goal certainly is to be a zero waste grocer by day 1,000 or whatever. It'll be 10,000.
Yeah, exactly. So recently on your IG, I saw you were at a founders conference and you mentioned that you were very intrigued by the conversation with Neil Blumenthal and others about the path to IPO. So I was curious, what does the future look like for Farm to People? What can we expect to see in the next 5-10 years?
Yeah. The thing that really intrigues me about IPO particularly is, and I think there's different however we feel about Patagonia. Like, I think like the one thing that's really inspiring about Patagonia is like this ability to stay private and stay
and employer owned also. They are an EOT.
Now they are, yeah. Or I guess they always were to some degree, but now it's like fully.
Now it's fully,
And I think that's wonderful. It was like such a brilliant move by, the founder. He's in his last act. And to me, I think one of the things that's frustrating about where we are, and again, could Farm to People be sold? Sure. I'm not, I don't want to rule that out and say we'll never sell. We're going to be like Patagonia. Like this is a very, very difficult journey, and I'd be remiss to be like, oh, we're going to do this if the right opportunity came along. Like, we will explore everything and want to do right by our customers, by our farmers, by our team. That said, there is like a sort of romantic vision of whether we're private or public, this ability that farm to people is the company that is maybe doing the acquiring, that is growing the business, and our founding principles and our mission is what's guiding, the future. And I think what was impactful about that panel was like 20 some odd years ago, in the venture ecosystem, a much larger percentage than today. I don't remember the exact number, but a much larger percentage than today of successful venture-backed companies were going public. I think, somewhere maybe around 50%. So 50% were exiting in an acquisition, something like 30 to 50% were exiting in terms of going public, which is kind of a beautiful way to do it. There's obviously risks. The public markets are much more fickle. The reporting is much more challenging. There's a lot of challenges around that. But today, the sort of change there is that really like 5 to 10% of successful venture-backed companies are going public. So, 1 in 20, everyone else, success looks like exiting to a larger incumbent. And what that means is that a lot more founders are starting companies with a deck that says our goal is to exit to this competitor from like day one. It's like, I want Unilever to buy me, or I want Procter & Gamble to buy me. And this is the market potential. And it's an MBA business case, like not necessarily around
legacy, not around legacy.
Yeah.
Really.
Not around legacy, not necessarily even around impact. And I think one of the person moderating that panel was Fred Wilson, who's the founder, co-founder of Union Square Ventures, and he was not satisfied with this. He was like, I want founders to take me up the mountaintop and show me the promised land, and don't show me that the promised land is Unilever buying you. Like you're changing an industry. You're changing.
Do you think this is like the millennial curse? Like, I feel like this is a bit of a millennial curse where we like saw like the Warbies and the I guess you could say Allbirds, although
the curse of capitalism.
Yeah, I mean, I think like we just
it's
got
short-term thinking versus long-term,
right?
Because those companies that IPO,
it was programming for success. Yeah. What is success? Success looks like getting rich.
Yeah,
no,
totally,
what Union Square Ventures is saying is he doesn't want you to show him the path to monetization. He wants to show you the path to real impact, because real impact and real purpose and real mission is the secret to success, I think. Right. Or at least that's what we're trying to prove out with this podcast and talking to founders like you, is when you are really in that unique purpose, like your dad, when you show up every day and you get excited and you're joyful about what you're doing, that momentum, that energy, it builds. Mm-hmm. And it creates this unstoppable momentum, much like Yvon Chouinard did with Patagonia. But like, that's the sauce. Yeah. The sauce is like being in your alignment, your flow, your purpose.
But I think that takes more time.
It
typically does. And I think we're just all very impatient and trained for instant gratification, and we get distracted by headlines and numbers, and we don't even know the details really most of the time. And I think that's a real challenge, is where we just shut down our intuition and just focus on what is everybody else doing, and short-term gratification. I think that's a big problem, because it takes so much time to build a good business. It does. Most of the time.
It does.
And also, like he was saying, and I think like so much of the success that we celebrate isn't real success. It's like the next fundraise.
Which is not. Shouldn't
it's
be the
not
goal.
Meaningless, but it's not the end goal.
Totally.
And it's not why you're building a business. You shouldn't be building a business for your Series C. Your Series C is a residual of you building an amazing business where you're a customer. And so celebrating that mentality more. There were many great talks that day, and it was a wonderful conference, but that one was really impactful because it kind of reminded me. And again, I'm not like that. That's why I prefaced it with, I'm not closing off any potential outcome. And certainly, this already 12 years in has wildly exceeded my some amount of the expectations I had, and it's still greatly is lacking on the vision that I have for the business. So it's like we're still at, base camp on this mountain that we've got to scale, but also like the fact that we made it to the mountain and we're still standing and we've got, a little bit of food in the backpack and we feel good about climbing to the next level.
You got some whole food in the backpack. Your regenerative food in the backpack.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly.
Amazing. Should we do the rapid fire?
Yeah, we're going to do rapid fire. We could talk to you for hours, clearly, but let's start to wrap it up. So a few quick questions for you. What would you say is your life's purpose and how does it align with your business?
I love storytelling. I love problem solving. I love the creativity and the grit of being an entrepreneur. And I have an incredible team. So my purpose, what I love is being a really creative thinker and problem solver, even more than the food, which is maybe a surprising thing to hear because it's like you created Farm to People. It's all about the food. To me, one, it's most of what we do is the unsexy stuff around food. It's logistics, it's pick, pack, and fill, it's technology.
It's supply chain.
Yeah.
It's supply chain.
Yeah.
It's not like all day long I'm just tasting.
Right,
I wish.
Right.
So to me, that is so much fun. That is so the driving passion of my life. And in my life, I even can imagine solving other problems too. Food is an amazing, and like I said, 12 years ago was such an opportunity to bring my passion for storytelling and for problem solving to food. But to me, I just love putting together a team, putting together, a purpose and setting impossibly hard targets and driving, full blast towards them.
What is your definition of success and why?
Really, this is something even when we started, and I've been both incredibly privileged in life to have gotten an amazing education, to have, been able to travel through my dad's work, to see a lot of the world. And so I feel like it's really important to start from that point of privilege, but I've never really thought about the money behind doing this for the money. And it's really interesting. I think that is a place of how you're born. I listened to your episode with the Jolie showerhead founder, and he's like, I grew up with a single mom, and to me, I needed to make money. And that resonated with me in a totally different way, where I was like, I grew up with a lot of comfort, and parents who were like, do what you love. And in some ways, the money will come. And that's a total privileged perspective, but really allowed me to start from a place of waking up every day doing what you love, and that's what success looks like to me. If I can spend my whole life waking up doing what I love, knock on wood, the money will come, and if the money's coming, I'll be able to wake up the next day and do what I love again.
Okay, last question. What are some current reads or books or Patreons or Substacks or podcasts that you're listening to that you recommend we should check out?
Well, obviously Say More. You guys are awesome. I've been following both of you for a while, so congrats on this and thank you. I'm honored to be on it. Really, I basically am pretty boring, and I really, really read a lot of business books. So
That's
I'm
not boring.
Okay, yeah. To me, it's not boring either. But it's I'm not going to tell you something like a great fiction. The last time I read a great fictional book is I can't really remember. But I really love, as you can probably tell, I really love thinking differently, and studying more of the aberrations of normal, what was normal or not. So I think on the podcast side, obviously I really think Acquired is wonderful. Listening to the historical companies that have gotten to large scale and how they were aberrations of what was normal in whatever time they were doing, but so many of those principles are forever, so I love that. In terms of books, I really loved Think Again by Adam Grant, I think. No Rules, the Netflix founder's book. one that's lesser known, but he's currently turning around a solar company, but he built a solar company in the 90s. It's called No Excuses Management by a man named TJ Rogers, which is just like really good about how to like set up bonus structures, how to set up targets, how important targets are for businesses, and how, you know, metrics are critical to fair equilibrium and like, you know, ROI. And so again, taking fundamental like business principles from anywhere and then applying them to a mission driven business is, I think, is critical in combining, you know, this sort of finance know-how with a unique approach to the world.
Love it.
Love it.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, no, mostly I definitely recommend following at Farm to People. Go to our website if you're in New York or in Northern Jersey. Definitely sign up, give it a try. We deliver to every borough and, you know, work with 150 small makers. So definitely check us out there. I do have a personal Instagram, and you can watch me go to founders meetups or do podcasts of my own, or occasionally go on fun trips, and that's at Michael Ray Robinov.
Amazing. Thank you for being
so
here.
Much. This was incredible.
Thank you so much for having me. Stoked.
Thank you so much for watching or listening today. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow along on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And even leave us a comment if you feel compelled. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to bring it forth into a future show. Thank you so much.